Okay. Good morning, good evening, everyone. This is Karen Kirchnock. I'm the program manager for 2030 Water Resources Group. I can see Mr. Bakshi there. Wonderful to see you. I think everyone, we can't. Okay. Everyone is still connecting. It's going to be a large group, so we're not going to do any type of roll call. But we'll jump into the meeting. Let me see. We have many screens up here right now, so we're just trying to manage right here. Good morning. Good evening, actually. For most of you, it's good evening. So, wonderful. Okay, so I see folks from across the globe already connected. So I'll say just welcome. This is Karen Kirchnock. I'm the program manager for 2030 Water Resources Group. Welcome, everyone. This is our webinar series on 2030 Water Resources Group with a focus on India. We had our first webinar on Peru, and now we've moved over to South Asia to cover India. I have to apologize because at the very same time right now, we're having a peer review meeting of our hydroeconomic analysis in Ethiopia. And so I have to co-chair that meeting and conduct that analysis. So I'm going to leave you in very good hands here with the India team. I will listen to the recording afterwards since I'm going to miss this. But I definitely appreciate the entire team that put this together, and also Mr. Bakshi, who has joined and is so very much involved in the work in Maharashtra. And I look very much forward to coming back again to India, probably in the next few months. But really wish you a successful webinar here. And my sincere apologies for not being able to stay. But I will turn over to, I think, Rochi next, who will then lead through the agenda. And I really look forward to then hearing the recording and following up with everyone. So I really wish you a successful webinar. And again, my sincere apologies. But since we have to also address our incoming work in Ethiopia, I'll turn over to there. Thank you. Rochi, I hope you're connected and can take over.
Yes, thanks, Karen. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on India. We hope to give you an overview of our work in the country and also pick on a few examples. So it's not going to be comprehensive because there's a lot more that we're doing, but hopefully it gives you a good overview. And if there are follow-up questions, we can always take it offline as well. I would like to ask my colleague Ajit to walk us through the India program, particularly the context of why we started to engage in the country and the key waters and we can get into some specifics. Just on housekeeping, since there's a number of participants, if I could request you to mute if you're not speaking, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruchi. So as Ruchi mentioned and also Karen mentioned, it's an exciting area of work that we do in India. Without spending much time around the context, I think I would jump straight into the presentation and then try to build on the context on the work that we do in India, and to also highlight the importance that WRG brings to the table when it comes to working in the water sector for such a large country with dynamic problems and with a number of participants and with shared and often conflicting interests. Recently, in June of 2018, the National Policy Think Tank of India, the Niti Aayog, came up with a report that tried to understand the problems that the water sector faces in India with a scorecard-based approach. And some of those were hopeful messages, but then there were also messages that were not quite hopeful for the sector. So we understand that in 2030 to 2050 time frame, that the country would be losing approximately 6% of its GDP on account of water scarcity. And we also have the largest population in any country in the world, approximately 600 million who face severe to acute crisis of water. So that's the magnitude of the challenges that the government of India and its states faces when it comes to water security related issues. The slide here that we look at is trying to say the different challenges that we face in the sector, and also probably the opportunities that would bring us the best returns on some of those investments that we make in the sector. So there are opportunities that the governments, the state governments and the national governments are trying to pursue at different scales, and where Water Resources Group is trying to support these initiatives in some states on a priority basis based on the conversation and engagement that we are having with the governments. So this is again the context in a macro perspective. We look at the size of population, the size of issues that we face, then it always is linked to the sort of the challenges that we face in the sector. And we have some of those problems that cuts across the water sector by looking at both surface water issues. Almost 70% of the water so 70% of the water that we consume in India doesn't fall under the safe category. Almost, as I said before, almost 600 million people do not they face severe to acute crisis of water. Also coupled with that is the problem of overexploitation of groundwater in India. Now that we meet 66% of our irrigation requirements from groundwater. So this is another crisis in the brewing. And we are getting more and more aware, the state governments are getting more and more aware of the crisis that is impending thanks to the work of organizations like WRG and the awareness that is built up through the platforms like the multi-stakeholder platforms that we are building at the state level. So the size of challenges that we face in India is large enough for that require concerted action and also engagements at different levels. So that is the underlying message from this slide. So we in India, we work in primarily the 3 states in India. These are Uttar Pradesh, the largest state in India. Then you have Maharashtra and Karnataka. So in these 3 states, we work with the subnational governments by setting up multi-stakeholder platforms which bring in the public, private, and the civil society together to address some of the challenges that are faced by the state government and also its people, and try to address that challenges effectively through innovations in the financial space, innovations in the technological space, and often institutional innovations. In these 3 states, we work closely with the government, supporting the initiatives of the state governments in addressing those challenges through what we call as multi-stakeholder platforms. And these multi-stakeholder platforms are legitimized by government orders that are issued by the respective governments to institutionalize the existence and also the actions that are warranted in certain cases. So the highest ranking bureaucrat in the state, the chief secretary, chairs the multi-stakeholder platform, the steering board of the platform. And these are also represented by the line departments, the senior most bureaucrats of the line departments that are often the agriculture department, the urban development department, the horticulture department, the irrigation and the minor irrigation and the water resources development department, and such departments based on the priorities at the state level. This is also where we bring in a lot of engagement and consultation and consultative processes going forward. And it's also the venue and also the platform that determines the priority at the state level based on the evidence that are built at the state level through robust analysis and also engagements with different stakeholders. Now, this is where the thematic priorities come up. So once the multi-stakeholder platform is instituted at state level, along with the scientific analysis that is done to build in evidence for action at the state level, the state government, along with its stakeholders, determine the priorities and also the opportunities that needs to be tapped into at the state level. So some of these buckets of opportunities, as you would call it, are then transformed into work streams that have clear timelines for action, clear opportunities to be tapped into, and also clear opportunities to work together to share, to solve some of these challenges. So as you see here, you have 4 different thematic priority areas that are marked by the state governments in consultation with the MSP, identified in consultation with the MSP, and where innovation and shared problem solving takes place. So in the case of the three states, the multi-stakeholder platforms operate. You can see that these issues cut across the rural and urban spectrum, trying to address the water security challenges in both dimensions, and also try to address some of these challenges that are the number one priority in the state. So in the case of Uttar Pradesh, you can see that the state government is trying to address both the tributary management issues of a large river, the Ganga River, and also tries to address the rain-fed area issues coupled with dryland farming and water scarcity issues in that state. In the case of Karnataka, it's again on the command area water productivity, where you have one of the largest micro-irrigation canal command area under implementation, the Ramthal project, which some of you must have heard by now. And then you also have interventions that look at urban and industrial water use efficiency. In Maharashtra, in the later part of this presentation, Mahesh and Mr. Bakshi will be speaking about the innovation that they are spearheading in the state, looking at industrial water use efficiency and also urban water wastewater reuse. So these are some of the innovations that are happening at the state level. And the biggest message that I would want to place before the audience is also that the multi-stakeholder platforms are offering a sort of a new leadership in terms of addressing water sector challenges from a systems perspective. So the multi-stakeholder platforms are now the systems leader in most of the cases where they bring together different perspectives, different interests, and try to solve different challenges through a consultative approach. I think the next slide would talk more about the national engagement that we have. I think Roji would be...
Thanks, Ajit. So with that background on why we're engaging in India, both nationally as well as at the state level, I'll walk you through a little bit of what we've done at the national level and also offer a couple of examples of the type of work coming out from our multi-stakeholder platforms. So in India at the national level, our engagement started with the National Water Resources Framework Study that we undertook at the request of the Planning Commission, which used to be the main planning body in India, and they used to prepare 5-year plans. So as part of this study, we were looking at key questions that the Planning Commission was trying to answer on water. And a lot of the proposed recommendations from this report were featured in the approach paper to the 12th 5-year plan at the time that this was drafted. Since then, we've done further analysis. So we've done a white paper on urban wastewater PPPs together with the Ministry of Water Resources. We've also done a report on circular economy solutions, more as a practitioner's guide. So how should municipal actors be thinking about circular economy and what are the steps to enable that? So at the national level, we have an MOU with the Ministry of Water Resources in India. We've looked at thematic engagements at the national level as opposed to setting up a full-fledged multi-stakeholder platform. So the first engagement has been around PPPs within the Ganga, as well as looking at a tributary approach. I'll get deeper into the Ganga PPPs in subsequent slides. But the tributary approach, as Ajit was mentioning, is essentially a sub-basin approach starting with the Hindon Basin, where we're trying to see how stakeholders can be brought together around an institutional mechanism for tributary management, looking at holistic approaches to sub-basin management. A second engagement has been around the topic of water accounting. So this was the first of its kind initiative on water accounting, where the center approached us to have objective and robust data to adjudicate, for instance, on interstate issues of water management. This was in the backdrop of the Kaveri water dispute, for those of you who are familiar. And the result of this engagement was to develop remote sensing-based water accounts. So various central agency officials have been trained on this, including in the Netherlands recently. And then the third engagement at the national level, which is sort of in the pipeline, is trying to see how our multi-stakeholder approach can be taken to other states. It's also aligned with what the World Bank calls the Lighthouse Initiative, so facilitating cross-learning across states in India with what is working well. So I would switch gears a little bit to look at two examples from the work that we've been doing. The first is on Ganga. Under this example, we supported PPPs for wastewater treatment. So for those of you who may not be familiar, in India there has been a lack of adequate operations and maintenance financing. So what you often find is that there's a lot of capex dedicated to wastewater treatment infrastructure, but in a couple of years, you find dilapidated structures which are not necessarily maintained. So in this case, we were looking at private sector participation for performance assurance, and the Ganga Basin being one of the biggest basins, the opportunity was huge. So the government of India had approved a Namami Gange program, which is a cleanup program for the Ganga, with a budget allocation of $3 billion. So finance was not really the issue for bringing in private sector. It was really about sustainable operations and maintenance. And this is a project where the World Bank Group worked collaboratively. So we had the World Bank, which had a $1 billion project focused on the Ganga. They were also providing technical assistance on the broader framework for PPPs and environmental management. We as 2030 WRG, we were looking at the development of a pilot PPP, starting with the twin cities of Mathura, Vrindavan. We also had engagement with private sector and civil society, bringing in their perspective into PPP design, because one of the factors to be considered was risk mitigation, especially in a sector like water, where there are multiple risks stemming to private sector. How do we make sure that there's adequate mitigation of those risks to invite private sector interest in the first place? We were also looking at alignment between different levels of government. So in this case, there was government involvement at the center, at the state, and then also at the municipality level. So making sure that there were institutional arrangements that made it easy to understand roles and responsibilities between different actors. And then ultimately, the IFC was brought in for transaction advisory support for the first 3 towns. There are 3 concessions that have already been signed for Mathura, Vrindavan, and Haridwar under this project, and various other PPPs that are in the pipeline. So how are these PPPs actually structured? They are structured as hybrid annuities. So 40% of the project cost is reimbursed at the end of construction, and 60% is paid as annuities during the concession period, along with the O&M expenditure. And the government of India set up a separate account for payment security under this project. It ensures O&M, of course, but also sustained performance over the 15-year concession period, because payments are linked to performance, to certain KPIs. We mentioned the multi-stakeholder platform a number of times. So what does it really mean? This is a snapshot of the platform from the state of Karnataka. So you see there that there are 3 different stakeholder groups that are part of the platform. The steering board is the apex body. So we have private sector, government, and civil society. Government usually chairs the platform. So in this case, we have the chief secretary, who's the highest ranking bureaucrat. But then you also have the heads of different government departments. So water resources, finance, urban, industries and commerce, as well as agriculture. Private sector comes in on the back of industry associations. So while we have CEOs, etc., represented, they are representing a broader stakeholder group beyond an individual company. So for instance, you see here that the CEO of Volvo represents the Confederation of Indian Industries, one of the biggest industry bodies in the country. And then we have civil society participation as well. So the co-chair of the platform is the chair of the Asia Pacific Water Forum, and we also have participation of academia. So the multi-stakeholder platform has different levels. What I just described to you is the steering board. That same model of multi-stakeholder governance is mirrored at the subsequent levels of the work stream and the task force. So the work streams are thematic priority areas, which are decided by the steering board. So in the case of Maharashtra, in this case of Karnataka, we have 3 work streams. One on agri-water, which is chaired by the Principal Secretary of Water Resources. We have another one on the urban sector, which is chaired by Urban Development, and then on industries, which is chaired by the Departments of Industries and Commerce. And below the working groups, we have what are called task forces. So the task force, as the name suggests, is a very specific activity that the platform is trying to resolve. And typically it drills much deeper than the working group. So for instance, if we have a working group on agri-water, we would have task forces which might be focused on particular crops, like in this case on sugarcane. We also had area-based approaches like the drip-to-market, agro-corridor, so on and so forth. So in the case of Karnataka, one of the projects that we facilitated is the Ramthal project. So it is one of the world's largest fully automated systems. There is private sector participation through different mechanisms. The first is on infrastructure. So private sector through GEN and Netafim has built the system. It covers 24,000 hectares with lift as well as drip irrigation. And there's sustained O&M over a 5-year period. It's a $130 million project. You see on your screen a schematic of the project, which runs all the way from water from the Krishna River all the way to water supply through drip at the farm level. So we realized under this project that infrastructure creation is great, but you also need offtake to justify investments into the infrastructure itself. So one of the elements we facilitated is an MOU with private sector agribusiness companies to procure from the area. So some of the names are on the screen there. You see ADM Agro, Global Green, and others. So we were trying to facilitate offtake of high-value horticulture together with water efficiency built in. And these were structured as 4-way MOUs. It was the first time that 3 departments in the state were coming together to sign an MOU with private sector. So these were the Water Resources Department, which was responsible for the engineering and monitoring the system, together with the Agriculture and Horticulture departments, which are traditionally responsible for market linkages. Some of the MOU signing companies there. We also had extensive engagement with farmers to make sure that they would adopt different cropping systems as well as the drip irrigation system itself. Based on the success of the model, the government is considering to scale it up through what we call a drip-to-market agro-corridor. So this is 650,000 hectares in the state of Karnataka. The map on the right shows you Ramthal, but also other project areas that are being considered. And there's an end-to-end approach. So while micro-irrigation is at the heart of it to drive water efficiency, we're also looking at post-harvest infrastructure, cold storage, logistics, packaging, etc. Again, for DMAC, we went through an extensive stakeholder engagement process to build in their inputs into the design of the engagement. So let's switch gears here to look at Maharashtra. And I would request my colleague Mahesh Patankar, who's the state coordinator for Maharashtra, to walk us through another innovation from the state of Maharashtra on wastewater reuse certificates.
Okay, thank you, Rochi, and welcome on behalf of the Maharashtra team as well as on behalf of Chairman, Maharashtra Water Resources Regulatory Authority, who is with us today, Mr. Bakshi. So, one of the key innovations that we conceived in the state of Maharashtra relates to the launch of wastewater reuse certificates. And all of us know that most of the wastewater recycling and the wastewater treatment has been conventionally done based on the project financing made by the urban local bodies and the governments. So typically the project financing happens through the state budgets and the operational expenses related to the operation and maintenance of the wastewater treatment plants happens through some kind of a cess collection. All of us know that water is a common property, and in most of the cases it is not essentially marked to the market, in the sense the true value of water being used in an urban sector, in an agricultural sector, or in an industrial sector is not known. So the world over, there is a move towards some kind of economic instruments where some kind of a pollution-based principle is important. So pricing of the pollution becomes extremely important, and one of the key essential ingredients of that innovation relates to the mechanisms such as prices or tradable permit systems. It is expected that the tradable permit systems would incorporate or inculcate the externalities and the environmental externalities related to the water savings itself and the water use itself. So based on this, we as a team, along with our partners in the state of Maharashtra, and most notably Mr. Bakshi sitting with us here today, we conceived something called as wastewater reuse certificates, which is supposed to be a tradable permit. And what we intend to do is some kind of a launch of 4 business cases. And these 4 business cases relate to large industries and industrial parks having their own trading mechanisms amongst themselves. Second business case being urban local bodies and the municipal councils having their own trading mechanisms among themselves. India is growing fast and we have a lot of urbanization that's happening, which leads to several housing complexes and gated communities. So we also have an opportunity to launch this kind of a business case which relates to housing complexes and gated communities having their own trading mechanisms. And lastly and most importantly, there is a possibility of even urban wastewater recycled in the agriculture sector, having all sorts of important checks and balances related to the bioaccumulation of the toxins in the food chain, etc. What we intend to do is, based on the proposed wastewater use certificates and the tradable mechanics, there are several types of incentives that one can offer. The first level of incentive is reduced or increased tariffs paid by urban local bodies for bulk water procurement when they meet or do not meet their own targets. The second kind of incentives could be the wastewater reuse certificates are traded as commodity to offset bulk water tariffs itself. So that's another important possibility. Third important possibility is, based on the wastewater reuse certificates, there would be higher allocation of general tax collection to the urban local bodies who create the WRCs. So in a federal system, if you collect higher level of GST, and if a particular urban local body or an industrial park is indeed achieving its own targets, there is a very interesting possibility of we assigning more water. So it's basically a very interesting carrot and stick being applied here in the wastewater use certificates. Moving on to the next slide, this is a pictorial of the structure of the trading mechanism itself. So you see 4 charts there, or 4 columns. The first column is the currently mandated target for the wastewater recycling. So to give you a context, in the state of Maharashtra, there is a talk of a particular level of wastewater reuse being mandated by the government, and that exists in several other states in the country as well. Going beyond that, what we aspire to do is have specific targets assigned to the industries, to the industrial parks, urban local bodies and the gated communities, which are higher than the mandated ones. So the tradable certificates will be offered whenever you see a situation where you are offering or you are insisting on higher recycling compared to the baseline. Now the 2 charts that you see, 2 bars that you see on the right hand side are about what's actually happening. So some of the urban local bodies, for example, would be able to they would be able to exceed their targets. So if they exceed their targets, there could be some kind of a mechanism that happen between those who exceed the target and those who underachieve the targets. So that's the kind of trading mechanism which is being conceived, and all of this will have its own economic value, which is absolutely important. So this is the technical concept. Now, how do we really convert this technical concept in some kind of a compliance mechanism which is not challenged at all? And that's where, on the next slide, we have included some kind of an exploration related to the blockchain applications. So the way the blockchain applications would work in case of wastewater use certificates, which has not been tried as far as our knowledge goes anywhere in the world so far, is to capture the freshwater intake from the urban local bodies and the industries and industrial parks and the gated communities, putting all of that into some kind of a cloud system using some specific protocols for the communication, and based on the recycling of the wastewater itself, another set of information would also get into the blockchain. And as one can see, a blockchain is a measure to permanently block all the information that goes onto the cloud, which is not tampered by anyone else. So that's the most important feature of the blockchain. So once this information goes into a particular blockchain, any kind of third parties and authorities can verify the tamper-proof ledger entries into the blockchain itself. All of this at the end of the month would get reconciled, and based on the wastewater reuse certificates issued in the form of blockchain repository, there would be some level of trading that would happen. As you can see on the bottommost part of the slide, this is a very simple depiction of how the blockchain works in terms of unique identification that it carries. So you have one part of a block which links to the other block and so on. So it's basically a chain of blocks that would get added. In terms of the planned next steps, we actually are in the process of launching on a very exciting process. So we are just about to launch a global hackathon related to that blockchain, which will start in the month of December, and we hope to end all of that by end of February. We are going to invite entries from several startups, educational institutions, IT companies, so on and so forth, to solve the 4 business cases that I explained on the previous slide. In terms of the juries, we already have some kind of a consent from some of the largest IT sector companies in India and outside, which include IBM, Tata Consulting Services, and so on. So that's a very important development from our end, and we would be glad to pass on this message across to all the participants of this webinar. And we will be conducting specific webinar related to the blockchain hackathon itself during the coming few weeks, and we would request you to stay tuned with our efforts here. We'll be glad to answer any questions related to this innovation so far. And may I now turn to Mr. Bakshi to give you a brief introduction of Mr. Bakshi. He is the chairman at the Maharashtra Water Resources Authority. He held very important positions as a part of being a commissioned Indian Administrative Service Officer in the government of Maharashtra. He has served right from being a collector of a particular district up to a home secretary before just before his retirement from the government, and before he assumed the important position of the chairman of Maharashtra Water Resources Regulatory Authority. So, Mr. Bakshi, over to you. We would like to engage with you and understand how do you see the multi-stakeholder platform that exists in the state of Maharashtra, and what we have learned during this webinar about what we do in terms of innovations in Maharashtra as well as several other states. So, over to you, Mr. Bakshi.
Thank you, Mahesh. Let me first thank Roshi and Ajit also for having invited me to this webinar. I am already a member of the steering committee of Maharashtra, the steering committee which is headed by the Chief Secretary. And I again thank the 2030 WRG for having selected me to head one of the work streams, that is urban wastewater recycle reuse. Now we have already started working with the work stream. That team has been constituted, and work stream of urban wastewater reuse and recycling and sanitation. So that is one of the 3 work streams of Maharashtra which has been thought of. Dr. Mahesh Patankar is the originator of this idea of having a reuse certificate, and we are fully supporting it as an authority. As you know, we are a regulatory authority and we have the mandate to pass regulatory orders which is binding on all parties, including government and private, as well as the NGOs. So all regulatory orders are mandatory for them, and we do wish to see how this shapes up and how we can convert it into regulatory orders so that it is mandatory for all of them. I'll give you a small some historical background of the wastewater treatment in Maharashtra. Maharashtra perhaps has the maximum number of municipal corporations. When I say municipal corporation, the population of the municipal corporation in Maharashtra is more than about, some of the corporations are more than 2 million. Mumbai will be approximately 15 million plus, and a place like Thane, which is very close to Mumbai, will be about 1.6 million. So most of the corporations in Maharashtra are very big in population. There are 28 in number. Now, as I keep telling my colleagues all over, that municipal commissioner, who is the administrative head of the municipal corporation, has so many things to attend to that some of the subjects which should have been on top priority keep sliding down. So that means the various priorities of the municipal commissioner and of the municipal body gets changed every day. So you have certain things to fight today morning, and the moment you start attending to things like wastewater treatment, sanitation, reuse, etc., this tends to slide down. I made a mental study of all this, and I found out why is it happening. I was also municipal commissioner of 4 different cities at 4 different times in the state of Maharashtra, and I found that this competing priorities, they overtake each other, and if you are not paying the same attention level to this issue, then this slides down. So why is it happening? It is happening because of 2-3 reasons. Firstly, the municipal corporation is required to supply water for drinking. So that becomes a top priority. After the use has been done, the wastewater, which is going to the river, or it is going to be treated, or it is just going to be left, that automatically receives a lower priority because of 1 or 2 reasons, that it is not viable sometimes to treat water and leave it in the river. The earlier policy of the Maharashtra government was that in case a municipal corporation treats it and leaves it in the river stream, then the leftover water, that is the river stream, became the property of the Water Resources Department. So as a municipal commissioner, I spend money, I treat it, leave it in the river bed, and then it is not my property. So there was no incentive. We in the regulatory authority recently passed an order saying that whatever is treated by the municipal corporation becomes the property of the municipal corporation itself. They have the freedom to sell that treated water to farmers. They have the freedom to sell that treated water to industries at a mutually decided rate. Therefore, there is some incentive to get something out of the investment that has been made. Second, by virtue of its nature of the project, it becomes unviable because a lot of investment has to be made. And sometimes these investments are scattered. For example, in the Mumbai metropolitan area, there are 8 municipal corporations. All of them are, let's say, about 25 to 30 kilometers away. Some of the corporations are just about 15 kilometers away, but they're all scattered. So if you take an approach of having treatment system for one municipal corporation separately, it becomes very, very expensive. So we are trying to borrow from the NMCG, National Mission on Clean Ganga, to have an integrated approach for treatment of water for the entire Mumbai metropolitan region. And we are roping in municipal corporation like Thane, which has a company under it. It is called STEM company. They are supposed to supply bulk water to 3 different municipal corporations, but they are financially very sound. So we brought them forward, and we are telling them that you have an integrated approach for the entire Mumbai metropolitan area. There it will become slightly more viable, and we will also try to link it up with some kind of agricultural activity to the company, give it to the company which does this combined integrated sewage treatment plant. So therefore, viability gap funding from the government, integrated approach for sewage treatment, linking it up with the agriculture, private agriculture farm allotted to the developer company, and also selling it to the farmers and industries. If you put all of them together, then viability becomes much better. While we were thinking so, Dr. Patankar came up with the idea that let us have incentive for reuse. That is, if you treat and reuse, then your tariff should be less. Bulk tariff should be less. This was a very welcome concept, and immediately in the regulatory authority we accepted it. We are working on it. We have to give final shape to it as to how this is to be brought into implementation and what will be the response of those municipal corporations which are paying heavily for drawing water from these storages. As some of my colleagues from other states will know, that Mumbai does not have a storage reservoir very close to it. We have to bring water almost from about 150 to 200 kilometers away from Mumbai. Similarly, Thane, Navi Mumbai, they bring water from long distances. So it's very expensive. The bulk water charges are given to the Water Resources Department, but after that, conveyance, cleaning it, purifying it, distributing it, blocking the leakages, accounting, all these things, metering, collection, all these things become very expensive and people have to pay very heavy charges. So if you bring in this concept of reuse certificate, recycle and reuse certificate, I am very sure, at least in the Mumbai metropolitan area where water becomes very, very important and also it is very expensive, this will be very, very useful. So I am requesting the WRG Group 2020-30 here in Mumbai to work it out. We will be helping them and we will finally be transforming that into a regulatory order so that it becomes binding on the state government completely. The other few issues that I thought I will use this platform for telling you that we are also in the process of setting up a center of excellence in Mumbai, in Maharashtra, with support from some of the other universities, IIT Bombay, as well as Science and Technology Park of Pune, who do a lot of innovations. Science and Technology Park of Pune, which is Dr. Jagdale's entire group, is working again under Government of India and under the innovation team. So they do a lot of innovation. So we thought it is good to bring them on board and make them a part of the Center of Excellence. In that direction also we are working. So I think this much comment for the certificates that we are designing here. WRG 2030 has been associated with us, at least I am associated with them for the last about 1.5 years, and I find that the team is taking these 3 streams very seriously, and we will be able to come out with certain indicative policy measures which will be implemented by the state government and also by the regulator. That is how it seems. Thank you.
The role of taking students. That's the next step.
The WRG 2030 in Maharashtra, we are actually having a 2-pronged approach. One is the policy and regulatory context. In the policy and regulatory context, we do work, and the other is the coordination and implementation of various projects and various ideas. In policy and regulatory context, the alignment of all the existing stakeholders who are talking differently, each one is not known to the other. That alignment is taking place at the MSP level. So civil society, the NGOs, the private companies like Mahindra and Mahindra, who are doing excellent work in treatment and reuse and recycle and reuse, excellent work, which was not known to me. So it's only because of the steering committee meeting and also after the work stream meeting that I found that that is an excellent example which can be replicated elsewhere for other companies in Maharashtra. Maybe for entire country it can be replicated, and therefore such alignment is taking place because of the 2030 WRG in Maharashtra. It's evidence based. All the proposals developed for government action and policies, they are evidence based. So we have certain empirical results and we then take it to policy level. Then enabling ecosystem changes to ensure enforcement and implementation, such as these reuse certificates. Coordination and implementation, we find that I think all the state governments, their representatives who are sitting from Uttar Pradesh or from Karnataka, they will realize that most of the departments are not in a position to talk to each other with a lot of clarity. Every department thinks that my subject is mine, I will not allow others to interfere, data is mine, I will not share. These are the problems that the country faces, and therefore something like 2030 water group where all the departments come together and they share each other ideas and they find it very useful to take the ideas and go ahead. I think that's very positive step that we are bringing all the departments together who hitherto have not talked to each other. They don't know what are the important areas they are working. They don't know what are the difficulties they are facing, how the difficulties of one department can be solved by the other department. These things they happen at the MSP level. We have gone through two rounds of meetings of the MSP itself, and I think many rounds of the work streams, 3 work streams, and we will certainly come up with a lot of policy recommendations. One of the ways in which Maharashtra Water Resources Regulatory Authority works is to have public consultations. We do not pass any regulatory order or any regulatory policy related order without large scale public consultation, and that is at all levels. Lowest level of farmers, stakeholders, NGOs, government functionaries, people's representatives, and therefore I find that associating myself with the MSP and 2030 Water Resources Group is a great way to achieve the public consultation. Rather than having the formal public consultations at every place like Nashik, Nagpur, Pune, if we are associating with the 2030 Water Resources Group, it achieves your objective of having public consultation because they have the representation from all the sides. So great ideas come up, we can give it a shape. There's a very methodical discussion and there is a very concrete result coming out of such discussions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bakshi, for sharing your thoughts from a regulator's lens, as well as your vast experience in governance in the state of Maharashtra.
Thank you.
So now I turn it back to Rochi and Ajit for moderating the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bakshi, for sharing your inputs on the value of the platform to Maharashtra and specifically to the regulatory authority, and also to my colleagues Mahesh and Ajit. So we have a few minutes for questions. For anyone on the call, if they would like to pose a question, either to Mr. Bakshi or to any of the members of the 2030 WRG team. If I could request you to state your name and affiliation along with your question, please. So, just on the presentation itself, as I mentioned at the start, it's by no means comprehensive. There are multiple working groups within India, as well as at the state level, that we've been focusing on. Hopefully what the presentation did here is to give you a snapshot of the type of the work that we're doing. So picking examples from the urban sector, looking at agriculture, as well as the technology space, to see how the multi-stakeholder platforms can drive innovation. So maybe I'll start off with a question to Mr. Bakshi, while others are still gathering their thoughts. Mr. Bakshi, what do you see as the biggest value of the platform? You mentioned, innovation. You mentioned stakeholders coming together. How is that really driving reform on the ground? So is it because stakeholders are part of the process that it becomes easier to align with different actors, or is it really that there is innovation in the design of initiatives? What do you see as the biggest value of the platform for the regulatory authority?
Roshi, I see it as a international level knowledge gathering, because we have been talking at our own level. We don't get the normal, an average employee of a department or an officer of a department doesn't get exposed to international practices. Whereas the 2030 group, Water Resources Group, which is all of you, I think the international exposure and what is happening in other states and what is happening in other countries with similar situation, I think that is the biggest exposure to us. And second thing is speeding up the things. A lot of ideas are there, people are very intelligent, they have ideas, they discuss their ideas, but to finally give it a shape, it becomes very difficult. And I find that the 2030 group is able to really push it very hard and bring it to a good speed. Sometimes I am not able to catch up with them because I find that certain things I had said last week, and they are ready with the proposals, and we discuss and we take it forward. So the speed that is required, I think the 2030 Bombay team, Maharashtra team is really having that speed, and it forces all of us to devote some more time and take the issues further. These are two important things that we have, at least I have to say that 2030 has helped us. Third is that attention of the government at the highest level, chief secretary level, who is the head of the bureaucracy in the state. If you are able to get his free time of, let's say, 1.5 to 2 hours, with all water experts are there, from CII to private companies to regulator to other people and those who are exposed to foreign experiences. If you are able to get his time, then I am sure at the time of making the policy, it will go through very easily. Rather than me telling something or a department telling something, if there's independent body of 15, 16 people, if there's something, it is likely to go through without any resistance. So that attention of government at the MSP level is available to us. This is the third thing I see that it's going to go a long way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bakshi.
Hi. Yeah, this is Tanzim from Bangladesh. I think the blockchain is a very interesting, disruptive technology. It's a new technology also. I'm not sure whether the full potential of its use in the water sector is yet fully understood. But I will be very interested to know a little bit more about the opportunities, challenges, and applications of blockchain in the water space. So if there is any PowerPoint that you have or even the slides you presented, if you can share that, it will be very, very helpful. Thank you.
Sure, Tanzim. We're happy to share the slides after the meeting. And in fact, we're starting to look at this theme of blockchain in India. So we're pioneering with the state of Maharashtra, but we're exploring in the other states as well, including Uttar Pradesh and Karnataka, what the opportunities might be. I'd like to request my colleague Mahesh to come in if he would like to add to the space or the opportunity for blockchain in India.
Before Mahesh comes in, can I suggest something?
Please.
Yeah, recently 2 days back I read in the newspaper that Punjab is thinking of setting up a regulator, water regulator. I just read about 2 days back that the Honorable Chief Minister of Punjab has told the officials to frame rules for setting up a regulator. I think my suggestion to you will be that in case you can tie up with Punjab first on priority basis, then right from the inception of the regulator as well as other departments concerned, I think the benefits will be huge, because Punjab is facing much more, many problems in groundwater, drawn of water, as well as distribution of water on equitable basis. So Punjab should be one of your targets. That's what I have to suggest.
Thank you, Mr. Bakshi. That's an interesting input. In fact, as I mentioned on one of the earlier slides, we are looking at potential replication of this multi-stakeholder platform approach to other states in India. And thanks for bringing that to our notice. We'll consider that as part of the process. Mahesh, over to you.
Yeah, so as far as blockchain are concerned, blockchains are being applied in several sectors, including agriculture, financial sector, water sector is being tried, so on and so forth. What's most important is blockchain, as we see it, is a very important tool for us to bring transparency required in the water sector. So you have a lot of governance, you have a lot of financing that is happening, you have a lot of innovations that is happening, but what matters at the end is how much water recycling has happened. And if you were to answer that question, use of certain new techniques such as blockchain becomes important. And then we believe that in IT sector, the experts would always say that they started using the terms as Internet of Things before, then they started using the term artificial intelligence, and now we are using blockchain. So some of the naysayers would feel that blockchain is going to change after 3 to 4 years, but what's most important and what's going to stay back is basically what information goes into the blockchain. So it becomes a very interesting tool for the water sector experts, the governments, the financial institutions, the regulatory authorities and compliance agencies, and all the stakeholders and public at large to view the information that's available in a blockchain in an absolutely transparent manner. So there is a lot of science and technique and art behind application of blockchains in different sectors. We are starting with the water sector here in Maharashtra. And there is a lot of interest from the technology providers, the startups and the innovators in that space. So as I mentioned earlier, keep watching this space. We certainly would keep bringing up new and new things that come our way in this particular space. And we'll be glad to sort of send you some more information related to what we do as follow-on emails. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think it's very interesting, and also we just came out of a meeting with Unilever, and Unilever informed us that for the sub-Saharan Africa and also for South Asia, they have about $40 million of innovation fund in collaboration with DFID. And this innovation fund, they also have an innovation hub through which they organize competition of different innovative ideas in the water sector. And of course, Unilever is our global partner. But we're also discussing with them here in Bangladesh, but also it's potentially could be for South Asia because they can channel these funds for different innovations in this region. Thank you.
Thanks, Tanzim. Yeah, something to consider is also how we expand beyond our current base of partners to think about new partners, both corporate and then also we're considering technology partners being more invested and more involved within our platforms to see what are the opportunities emerging within the water space. So the blockchain technology that we mentioned is linked to the urban industrial sectors. There's, of course, a huge opportunity in agriculture as well. And we look forward to working with our multi-stakeholder platform members to try and identify those opportunities and bring them into the platform's work.
Thanks, Rochi.
If there are other questions from those on the line.
Hi, Rochi. This is Callie from the World Economic Forum.
Hi, Callie.
Hi. I had just a clarifying question about the hackathon process that was mentioned. Is the objective of that to surface essentially proof of concepts for how the build out of the blockchain-backed system would work? And if so, is that what you were mentioning in the context of having IBM and others involved as the jury? Just hoping to clarify if I heard that correctly.
That's right. So I will pass over to Mahesh to share the details of the hackathon process. Mahesh?
Yeah, sure. So typically the hackathons have been tried as on premises. So you have something like 200 teams comprising of 2 or 3 individuals each and smart individuals coming into the room, and you give them a particular problem statement. You give them the machines, they use the machines, and you have certain mentors around that. Of late, we are seeing that there is a good potential to even launch these kinds of hackathons or virtual hackathons. So what we intend to do is as follows. We are going to have a team of mentors and juries on the technical components of the business cases itself who understand the wastewater reuse technologies, so on and so forth. So we'll have about 5 to 6 individuals who we are shortlisting and inviting to be a part of that jury. On the other side, we'll have experts from the IT sector. So that's where we are inviting folks from IBM, Cisco, Tata Consulting Services. We are also going to invite NASCOM, and we have one of our partners, BlockCity, which is going to manage this particular process for us. So based on that, we're going to have specific problem statements exposed to the world. We are also going to use some kind of social media marketing to reach out to more and more teams of innovators, and based on which we expect at least 250 or so teams expressing their interest in the block in this particular hackathon. We are going to conduct specific webinars which will be participated even by the jury members and the mentors. And based on that, we will shortlist up to 20 teams who will be invited to Mumbai in all probability around the middle of February or so. And they will be expected to make a presentation to the jury, which would comprise again of the technical experts from the wastewater treatment side and the IT experts from that side. So, and then there will be some kind of use cases that will be solved from the perspective of application of blockchain itself, and all of that information and all of those algorithms would be available for everyone to dip into and use for their own business cases. We also hope to engage with the investor community to even take some of those finalists to some kind of actual business cases that one can launch. So from those 20 that will bring to Mumbai, we also expect to have some kind of follow-on and follow-through, which hopefully will be supported by some of the large companies, because we are going to require specific funding for that as well. So all of this is going to be in the public domain in terms of the algorithms and so on subsequently. So that's like a process that we have conceived so far. We are creating a presentation for the first webinar that we'll launch to announce the hackathon itself, which will be a combination of virtual as well as on-premises. So, we would like to make sure that we send this information out to several individuals who would be interested, and certainly through WEF as well. We will be glad to pass this information on to your stakeholders and so on. I hope that clarifies our intent so far. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much for that. And I think from the forum's perspective, we certainly look forward to learning more and discussing how we can support you in the dissemination of that information.
Great, thanks, Kelly. So we've come up on the hour. If there is any last question or comment, and if not,
Mr. Bakshi.
Since that we are exceeding time limit, but still I would like to ask the Ramthal project group, whether they will be willing to come over to Maharashtra and make a presentation to our experts and different departments, so that we can try to do it in Maharashtra also in some area where drip irrigation system and market linkages can be made possible. Just a query, that's all. I don't.
Absolutely, Mr. Bakshi, and it's one of the things that we're trying to promote within the country program. In fact, within the wider WRG initiative is cross-learning across states, across countries. And as part of that initiative, we'd be very happy to see how the Ramthal experience can be brought into Maharashtra. In fact, Maharashtra itself has a working group on command area water productivity, which is looking at exactly this question as we speak. And a project implementation unit has been set up by the government, which is integrated off-farm and on-farm investments along with market linkages. But very happy to see how we can deepen the efforts on that, learning from Karnataka and other states.
Thank you.
With that, I would like to thank you all for joining. We'd be happy to share the slides after this meeting. And please feel free to reach out to any of us if you have specific questions on what was presented or even the wider India program. As I mentioned, we couldn't go into the details of everything that we're doing, considering it's quite a big portfolio of activities, but we'd be happy to share information offline. So thank you again for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.